I have to sort this out on my own. Without the council. And without you. This isn't about you. I can't stay here any longer. Not now. I have to sort this out on my own. Without the council. And without you. This isn't about you. I can't stay here any longer.
For generations, a tiger in the force.
Hello guys, welcome to another episode of DYAD in the Force. I am Element, and I am here with my co-host, Darth Choco, and apparently we're doing a thing. So, here. This is episode 86. We're talking about Padawan by Kiersten White, but before we get to that, we do have some other segments to cover as well. Choco, how you doing today?
I am doing great. So my actual like weight loss and stuff content is still coming. I know I promised it, and I've actually been filming my meals and stuff, but yeah, I'm down 12 pounds now. It's been 2 weeks. It's just kind of crazy, but yeah, we're gonna keep. Now I understand why, and I have actual measurements for my macros, and it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's quite a difficult journey to take for sure. But congratulations on your starts, and hopefully, well, not hopefully. I can't wait until you are feeling. Are you frozen? Okay, you were like mannequin still there for an eerie moment there. We are joined by Star Wars English class. Returning regulars, Fern and Julia. We'll start with Fern. If you can introduce yourself for everyone who is unfamiliar with Always Fern.
Yes, hello, I'm Fern. I'm on TikTok as Always Fern, and I am one half of the podcast Star Wars English Class, a name I can definitely say out loud on the first try. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jedi, and I'm so excited to be here on one of my favorite shows to talk about both of those things today.
Aww.
Mm-hmm. I'm Fern, and this is my favorite store in the Citadel.
Reminder for both of you to send me a graphic for that so that I can insert it, because without it, Fulcrum Transmissions, a Star Wars podcast. Episodes every Monday, anywhere you stream podcasts. You can find them on the Fulcrum Pod and Fulcrum Podcast. So,
incredible.
Yeah.
I am actually happy if we're promoting, like, I'm glad to promote Fulcrum Transmissions instead of Star Wars English class.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Well, you
Go
know
listen
what?
to them.
There's room for everybody. So if you guys can get me a graphic like that, then we can.
I mean,
we can do
if
that
you're telling me
when
I get to go make a fun little Canva, that's like a little treat for me. I love making fun little pictures, so I would love to do that and procrastinate other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and speaking of
I'm
which,
not creative. I will. Yeah.
you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Julia.
I'm not creative. I'll start off. Yes, hello. I'm Julia. I have not been on the TikTok for a while because I think everybody over there is still having a hard time, and frankly, I can't handle that right now. So I'm still taking a break. So right now, probably the best place to find anything I'm doing would be the podcast. There's an episode that I need to be editing, which is the second half of Fern and I's discussion about Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, that I haven't done, which I need to do. But that will eventually be out. We'll be doing an episode about Padawan eventually, and then the next episode we're doing regular episode is going to be on redemption arcs. So there's a lot of really good stuff coming up. It just all involves
So exciting.
things. All involves me doing things, which is unfortunately not in my wheelhouse at the moment. So this is I'm excited to get into doing things again by being here. So I can continue to do things in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, I can just say we love it when you do things, and I've always appreciated it. So we're looking forward to the future in which you do things. We did have an important question in the chat from Greg Pryor, and he asks, "Hey yo, do you guys read the chat?"
Yes.
Obsessively, personally.
This is a heavily chat focused show. So if you have any Star Wars questions or any comments to make during the show, you can feel free to make them. We read them all the time, like so. And you will see that whenever that happens. And I was going to do that. I was going to shout that out. So thank you, Choco, for being of one mind with me. So yes, if Julia, you are still hesitant or reticent on rejoining the TikTok sphere, then please follow these two lovely individuals on Star Wars English class. They're some of our favorite people on Earth and in the galaxy. And today, as mentioned, we are going to talk about the Padawan book by Kiersten White. And in case you are unfamiliar with how that's going to work, we appreciate lurks. If you do not want to be spoiled, once we start talking about it, you will see this thing come up. And in this case, you will know that we are talking about spoilers. But you can always just mute and lurk. It's always appreciated when you do. Just don't leave. Don't leave us be. Give us your patronage. As Greg says, sweet. LOL, I'm writing a Star Wars novel now in talks with Lucas Publishing. Really? Well, congratulations on that, and good luck on that venture. Hopefully, we'll be covering that novel in the future when it comes out. So let us move on to announcements. Does anybody have any announcements to make?
I will say, just really quick to Young, you don't need to be a lurk just yet. We are not yet covering the book, so you won't be spoiled as of yet. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, any news?
Actually, I was gonna ask Fern really quickly because I mean, I spoke to you about an NPC, right? Going somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to speak ambiguously, I am approaching a lot of people, including Silmer Emily, and a couple of other people that are huge Lord of the Rings fans. I am immortalizing them in ways I can't speak about right now, but they will be soon when the next expansion hits. That's all I'm going to say. Shout out to people in the chat. And shout out to Connor for being a member for 14 months. It's an honor to be a member this long. I still can't believe we've been running for this long. And I think we are a little less than 20 episodes away from our 2-year anniversary. I don't know what we're going to do. I'm probably going to subject Choco to a spicy ramen challenge. Maybe.
Bring it.
Yeah, or like the one chip challenge. I don't know what's hip with the teenagers these days and the challenges.
The cinnamon challenge?
Oh,
for
please
sure.
no. That brings me back to that one video. I forget the name of the creator, but like that was like the video. That was the example that drove everyone away from the challenge. Just the way that they reacted. Age yourself there. You did. Choco says young.
I mean, yeah. I'm an oldie but a goodie. I did do that challenge unsuccessfully, as most people do. No one talks about how when you breathe in, the fine dust of the cinnamon coats your esophagus and you feel like you're dying.
Yeah. I mean,
Sounds fun.
I kind of feel like that would be like close to breathing in Tatooine, like very sharp sand
True.
particles.
Yeah, no wonder he hated it.
Yeah. Do you guys have any announcements you guys want to share before we move on?
Don't think so, other than we do have new episodes of Star Wars English Class, the ones Julia mentioned, coming out soon. And I think that's it in terms of at least things we're working on together right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shout out to Kiki in the chat who says, "It's Julia."
It is me. Hello. Correct. Hello. Oh man.
And Jedi Ninja says they completed the cinnamon challenge as a teenager.
Oh boy.
Impressive. Most impressive.
Okay. I worked at a pizza place and was the F&G. The cook said to try it, and I intuitively knew what to do. What do you mean you intuitively knew what to do? Is there like an optimal way to complete
Oh
this
yeah, there's
challenge?
strats, there's hacks, all
Can you
all sorts
speed
of
run it?
things. I was crouch sliding. Yeah, no. My downfall was mostly the fact that my friend, as soon as she tried it, as soon as she put the spoon in her mouth, she just went and just like like it just slowly dribbled like down her shirt and all this stuff, and it was really gross. And I started laughing, and then I laughed out and breathed in, and then it just went.
Oh.
Bad.
So yeah. I feel like my strat would have worked, but you know.
How much water did you have to drink?
A lot. And my friend's garage smelled like cinnamon for the next, I don't know, year and a half, which wasn't
Oh
a
my
bad
gosh.
thing.
Could be worse
Worse.
smells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the very least, cinnamon smells nice.
Mhm.
So
Suki says hi as well.
hello, Suki.
Suki!
Where is she?
Oh,
Oh, she says hi from across the galaxy.
Yeah.
Got it. It's okay. Let's move on to our first segment, which is the Fandom Checkup, and it has something to do with Padawan, to say the least. We did react to this earlier with our good friend Kiki from the PNW. And I guess I wanted to get your guys' takes on the Twitter dumpster fire that is the reaction to this quote unquote suggestion. How are you guys feeling about it?
We actually talked about this earlier today.
We did, yeah. So I mean, I feel lucky enough that I'm not seeing a lot of the like horrible negativity and just like the worst takes imaginable. I am seeing people react to those takes, but I'm not seeing them directly, which is nice. I feel lucky that most of what I saw and interacted with happened last week when this sort of like initial wave of announcement. Are we being coy here, or can I say what this is about?
Oh, we already made a
speaker
video
mic.
on it. You can go
Okay.
full on out.
Yes. So Padawan suggests, or I'm going to use the term canonized because it makes me happy to do so, but sort of canonizes that at the very least, Obi-Wan Kenobi has thought about kissing boys and girls and people of other genders. And this was very exciting to me. It was very exciting to lots of people, and I feel lucky that the sort of discourse I saw surrounding it on Twitter came last week when there was sort of an initial announcement about this, and everyone was just so excited and positive, and we're celebrating, and it was this really beautiful thing to watch unfold. So that was my experience. Then I hear the New York Post wrote an article about it and just sort of dragged it into exactly the sort of attention it probably shouldn't be getting, but it is what it is. It's not surprising. People will oh, it's Buster and Suki, look at them, they're having a play date. Anyway.
2 times the amount of puppies? This is crazy.
Amazing.
This is getting out of hand.
Now there's 2 of them.
And they're juxtaposed in terms of color.
Yeah.
They
That's
balance each
insane.
other so nicely.
Hi.
Yeah, the thing about that New York Post is, it's like when this stuff happens for representation, it's so a side remark that it's not, the book's not about his sexuality. It's just one of those things, his encounters. But in so posting about it, they are making it bigger than it needs to be. Because then you're like, well, what about the rest of the book? What about the story around it? It's just like...
I mean, I think it's absolutely something that should be celebrated, and I do not begrudge anyone who has been reacting positively to this news. It was very exciting when I got to the page in the book where this whole interaction sort of occurs. You know, I'm texting Julia in all caps, like, I thought this might happen, but I didn't want to believe it. Oh, I'm so excited. I don't begrudge anyone that reaction at all. I think it's sort of to be expected that, of course, especially, and I hate using vague terms like this, but right now, in the current political climate, it's not surprising to me that people are taking this scene completely out of context, do not care what's in the rest of the book, and are, of course, going to take it as indication that Disney is, you know, furthering their woke agenda, their super real woke agenda.
Their
whole
incredibly
sexual
weak
agenda.
sauce woke agenda that they refuse to actually, like, if they wanted, you know, they have all this power, and if they really wanted to push an agenda, they would, like you know, it's their,
change
you know,
the landscape here. They could do it.
yeah, right. But I had read this. I read Padawan before Fern. I read it. I read it before they did, and I was sitting on this piece of knowledge, like, hurry up and get to it, like waiting to get to that point. You know, I'm not, you know, a member of the queer community, but I don't want to be like, I have lots of queer friends. That's not what I mean. What I mean to say is, yes,
You got a black friend too.
Yeah, this is true.
You got an Asian friend.
The joy I've seen with, you know, seeing how this is impacting people and seeing how much joy it has brought to people, and frankly, like, the shock of this is not something I think any of us thought they would actually put any time or effort into recognizing formally. You know, it's simply, it's just truly shocking to me that they would take something that many people have been reading or theorizing about and say, yeah, this is, you know, true to this character. And something Fern and I were talking about is, if it wasn't Obi-Wan, this would be a non-issue. If it was a new Star Wars character, it would be less of an issue. If this was just a regular fantasy YA book, not a problem at all. In fact, it would just be another example of, like, and we were talking about too, how in a book, this is vague, I'm not really spoiling anything, that's about him finding out what type of person he is, what he wants, how best to fulfill the sort of role in the galaxy he feels called to fill. this is exactly the type of thought he would be having about being confronted with different sort of parts of life that he probably hasn't thought about. So like, we were talking about how well it fits in the context of the story as well. And it's about self-discovery. And so, you know, the fact that it's a little vague, I think, yes, absolutely does speak to the fact that I'm sure there was at least pressure or understanding to make it so that if they don't want to recognize it anywhere else, they don't have to, but also because he probably doesn't know yet. He probably is still going to discover, probably in one very impactful relationship, what sort of, you know, romantic or sexual orientation he identifies with. But in the end, it's really not as important as his sort of identity as a Jedi, right? That's sort of the number one important identity to him. So, Suki, do you have something to say?
She's being a ham.
Buster?
It's like a menace.
Do you have anything to add, sir?
He's our third podcast co-host. He's very quiet. He keeps to himself most of the time.
Yeah.
And it goes into like my default kind of way of thinking for anyone in the Star Wars galaxy is that like we mentioned this earlier in our video reaction, is that it's hard to believe that anyone in a galaxy filled with multiple species and interspecies relationships, that at the very least you're not pan or you
Right.
know, accepting of all of these species. I mean, we have Kanan and Hera. It's just like, what do you call that? That wouldn't be a normative you know, term.
Right. We don't even know what is, like you said, normative and what is, are there, you know, taboo relationship types in the way that we have, you know, and I'm sure different cultures, different planets have different, you know, beliefs and things. But yeah, that's something that Fern and I actually talk about a lot, is like
All the time, yeah.
what is the nature of relationships in the galaxy in terms of like what is quote unquote acceptable? Are there belief systems that have certain values that, you know, say you can't have this type of relationship? You know, it's interesting because yeah, like Kanan and Hera, is that more controversial than like two men of the same species, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but we don't know, and that's something that makes these conversations harder to have, because we have to put it in the context of our world, because we don't know the context of their world. So we have to put it into a framing that is going to be kind of flawed for this galaxy, because we don't understand what their understanding of sexuality even is. So it makes it harder.
This
Well, I
is
do have a
probably
quick
something.
question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
For both of you, and then I want you to continue with what you're going to say. So a lot of people don't want any changes to happen to their, you know, pre-existing character. So what exactly does this change about Obi-Wan and his story?
I mean, nothing at all. I think is where we're. I mean, so what it changes is only external to the story, which is it changes our understanding of this character. It allows us to recontextualize relationships and interactions that we might have previously believed in our hearts of hearts, maybe tend towards romantic or sexual attraction. Now we have something we can point to and say, and this would not be out of character for him because he has had these feelings before, right? This is something he's grappled with before. So it gives us a little bit of legitimacy where we can look at his relationship with Commander Cody and say, why shouldn't we say that they might have had feelings for each other? There's nothing to indicate that that's an impossibility for these two characters, right? Internally, it changes nothing about this character, because I think we'll talk about this, I'm sure, a ton as we talk about this book, but there are so many moments that just feel like, okay, Kiersten White really gets Obi-Wan. She knows who he is and what's important to him. And this was one of those moments where I felt like she understands how he forms relationships. She understands how he interacts with the people around him. And so I think it fits so seamlessly. Like, it changes nothing about him. It just gives us a little more context.
Yeah. There was a reply in the Twitter thread that were like, I thought he loved Satine. And I'm just like, he still does.
That's, you know, and that's actually something that is a little bit frustrating. And I'm sure we'll get to this when we talk about the book in general. I was reading this book while the series was coming out, and there was a lot of moments I had where I was thinking about how I wish that these things were bigger, that these things were more impactful to his character later on, that things like this would come up later. And so I think that that's a double-edged sword. Like, yes, it sort of deepens the character and recontextualizes the character, but it does so in a way that can easily be ignored in other stories. And so that's also really frustrating, because this could be such a momentous thing, and it is in many ways, but it's also something that's going to be easy for future creators to sidestep, which I find, and I'm sure many people find, frustrating. So managing those two things is, going to be a challenge, as it is with anything in this fandom.
Yeah. As with all things Star Wars, really, in this fandom.
Yeah.
It seems like everything that is not understood as camp in general is just everything that is nuance is a very difficult subject to cover in this fandom. Choco, do me a favor and vamp while I prepare the DYAD weekly trivia.
Absolutely. When it comes to this conversation, I will say the one thing that I have noticed is that no one who is I haven't seen any takes that are really anti that come from people who've read the book.
Yeah.
I've just always thought that was strange, of being mad at a book that you haven't read and don't plan to read. It just, that book exists, and I don't like it, and it's just an odd take.
Well, especially so many of these people. I know a couple of people were responding about Satine, but I know that there's a lot of people who are outraged that don't even know that he had a female love interest. Like, I'm sure that there are many of them that are like, Obi-Wan, not a heterosexual man, and it's like so uninvolved in his existence in the movies and in the TV show. Like, there's so much to his character that a lot of people don't know about, and so it is very funny to see people getting outraged when I'm like, guy, you gotta sit down. There's so much homework. You have no idea how much you've missed. Like, this is truly like that he met three gods, and then there was like there's so much has happened. Like, I don't even, you know what I mean?
Faked his own death at one point.
He was bald, and it was the worst.
He was bald.
Oh, God.
It's okay. Bald Obi-Wan cannot hurt you anymore. And it's also interesting because that, as an aspect to someone who is a Jedi, I also just never quite seems I hesitate to use the word relevant, but like, it's not, they're Jedi. It's not like a lot of this is going to be pursued, but
for Obi-Wan especially, I think, again, we'll get to this talking about the book, but something Fern and I agreed on in terms of like really feeling like Kiersten White understood was that like his number one identity is Jedi. Like, that is the thing that is most important to him. But all of this is wrapped up in how he sees that version of himself. Like, how does this affect being a Jedi, right? And there's actually moments in Brotherhood that I think are really interesting to contextualize with this, because he's so unsure of relationships and romance and what he wants. And then by the time of Brotherhood, he's thinking, man, could I have done something differently? And so seeing the thread there now between this sort of beginning realization of who he is in terms of those types of relationships and what he wants, to feeling regret about it, is like, it's crunchy and angsty and good, and I love it very much.
and understanding what he went through and thinking in Brotherhood, you know what? Anakin might have to go through this himself in order to figure this out. It is powerful. Another thing that we did get this week is we had our first High Republic show back. And they dropped some juicy nuggets in there. It looks like you guys may be aware of it. Any thoughts? I'd love to hear.
I think Julia has thoughts.
I'm sorry.
That's the face of thirst. Let me just call that out right now.
It's fine. I have been causing problems for my friends for a while now, because the moment they released the description that was like, he was a skater boy, she said, see you later, boy. I was like, this is my Joker. We all know how I feel about Forbidden Jedi romances, right? So the fact that this description is like, he's a party boy and she's very serious Jedi, and they're definitely not falling in love, and that's actually in the description of the book. Weird to me that they would give that away in the actual description. But then they released the actual concept art of Axel Greylark, and I lost my mind.
His name is Axel Greylark.
First of all, and second of all, someone was like, make me the sexiest anime boy you can, and they were like, yes sir. and then they did it. They went there. And then it's very funny because if you look at the cover, we have I forget the Jedi's name. She's like beautiful, and I'm just imagining whoever was like, yes, let's put these two really attractive opposites together on this mission where they're going to have to work together. Like, what were they expecting? I don't know. I'm very excited for this.
This whole storyline was designed, it was engineered in a lab to suit Julia's tastes, and I'm really happy for her.
I was worried he wasn't gonna be hot, and then they were like, you fool, how could you ever mistrust us? Yeah, he looks like, he's like comically handsome in the like, anyway, I could talk about him forever. I hope he's okay. I hope he does well.
Let you.
I'm very excited to see this unfold. The skater boy romance across the stars. So
I'm glad to find out that Julia's tastes has to be curated alchemically.
Well, it's actually very simple. Buster, what are you doing? Sir?
And I just sent it in case you want to try and display it. I don't know if it's how difficult that might be. If you wanted to see what good old Axel looks like. He looks like a you said it perfect. If you took like a Disney prince and made him anime, it would be him.
Yeah. That's exactly what he looks like. He's wearing a cape. So that tells you a lot of what you need to know.
This says a lot about me that like I did not really notice his handsomeness, but I did notice the cape. The fit is incredible. I will say,
he's dressed
I would like
impeccably.
It. Yes, the man has a sense of style, which is important, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited for him to be seemingly worthless, and then for them to have a moment in which his charm reveals a true heart underneath, and then he does something kind to help them in their mission, and she's like, uh-oh. I kind of feel like I know what's going to happen, but in a way that makes me excited. Zoraida Cordova wrote a very, very cute romance in the Black Spire. Oh my gosh, what's her novel called?
It is called A Crash of Fate.
A Crash of Fate. Very cute star-crossed romance. So I trust her implicitly in terms of this. I'm sorry, he's so hot. I really can't express it enough. So that's what I think. I think he's really hot, and I think Yoda was a fool to not see that this was going to be a problem, or whoever was involved in putting this together.
Yeah. I just really enjoy the hints, the tidbits. Like, as Star Wars fans, the reason I love the High Republic is I love this feeling of we're on the precipice of this new horizon. I'm gonna try to not sing Aladdin, but there are new horizons to explore, and I'll chase them anywhere, and there is time to spare. But we got a bunch of different covers, and we got to see some of these new characters. We got to speak to the new writers.
Ephraim. If he is Star Wars Flynn Rider, I will be deceased. Buddy, have you seen him?
There he is.
For those in the chat, that is Axel Greylark.
Look at him.
He looks great.
I love the tie. I'm obsessed with how this jacket ties.
Yeah, same.
It's so good. Look at the little smirk. What can I say? What can I say?
He gives me like, for those of you who are familiar with Gundam Wing, like Treyas Kushrenada, if you're familiar with Gundam Wing. I know it's a very old anime, but yes.
Not. I'm not familiar with it specifically, but I'm trying to place my finger on exactly who he is to me. He's oh my goodness, the thing is just,
What does Axel Greylark mean to me? That's what we have to decide.
I think he looks like a Fire Emblem character to me.
Well, Jedi Ninja says Tuxedo Mask, which is great. It's a great
Tuxedo Mask,
analog.
I like that.
Young or not young? Kenny said Dooku if
yes.
Dooku stayed a Jedi. Which, yeah, you never know. Tuxedo Mask is a deep cut. Without the mask.
okay. So he looks like
It's
Sven.
Jedi Suku.
Sven, the original pilot of the Blue Lion of Voltron.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I see it now. Or what about Eric from Little Mermaid?
That was my
Yeah,
my
he
first-
does look a little bit like
absolutely.
Eric.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This actually explains a
flavor of
lot.
that.
I'm actually having a realization right now. I think this is The Little Mermaid is my favorite princess movie, and I was obsessed with it as a child. So this is a through line in my life. This makes a lot
You
of
can connect
sense.
the dots.
Yep, you can connect the dots for sure.
All right, well, let's take that
All
way
right.
before juices start flowing.
Oh no!
Don't do that.
I apologize in advance
Got me drooling.
or after the fact. I think we can move on to Pep. No. Hey, sometimes that happens. I'm sorry. I cannot help it. Now I'm just like I feel alone. Okay, so let's move on to our next segment. I don't know. Have you guys read Catalyst?
No.
No, but I have read the description of Catalyst, which I think gives you
I
the
haven't
most
even
important-
read that.
the most important piece of information, which includes the phrase Krennic's nocturnal carousing. And
That's where Krennic's nocturnal carousing comes from?
yeah. Anyway, Krennic's nocturnal carousing is the name of my Star Wars D&D playlist for my character. So that's all I know about Catalyst is Krennic's nocturnal carousing. But what else do you need to know? Honestly,
I mean,
he partied hard and yet somehow got good grades. That's what I understand about this book.
that's the name of my sleep paralysis demon. So you know.
Young says,
I
"Oh
would
my
really
God,
like to
Julia,
approach
that's
this
amazing
next
name."
segment as if we were in class and I haven't done the reading, but I'm going to try and fake it as if I have.
All right. Well, before we get started on this segment, I do have a weekly DYAD trivia for everyone, and this
Buster, do
is
you want to play?
a shout out to Rebels fans because when was the Rebels character Ezra Bridger born?
Buster.
And you guys have 60 seconds to answer in the chat, but if any of you also are guests know, you can just kind of chime in when you can. We
How
do
specific
have,
do you want?
Yeah.
as specific as a birthday can get.
Okay.
We do have an answer in the chat that excuse me, that is correct
Empire Day.
halfway. But when exactly is Empire Day?
Can give you the year.
Yep.
Yeah.
The day.
The day of democracy.
I mean,
That's really good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm operating the assumption that
I can
Fern
give
and
you guys
know
year
and
if you
where-
want
yeah.
it.
Go for it.
So it's 19 BBY. He was born 2 days before Luke and Leia. It's Empire Day. I can't give you
Empire
a
Day.
calendar date. Empire Day.
Empire Day.
Nope, that was the answer we were looking for. 19 baby. Congratulations to
We're like
Fern
19
who
babies.
wins. Yeah.
Sorry.
Congratulations to Fern who wins.
We're not talking about
good
Axel
jobs.
Greylark anymore.
No.
Yeah, I can't wait for. Never mind. There's a joke I make that makes people uncomfortable about the end of the Fallen Star,
Not
in which I
today.
say, "I'm sorry, I have to say it. I can't wait for them to name their baby Stellan," which is the code I use for when I think there's going to be a secret Jedi baby. The phrase is, "Can't wait for them to name their baby Stellan."
You can probably imagine who's naming their baby.
You can probably.
Context clues.
Wow, 19 baby. I missed it by a decade. A great way to remember this birthday is that Empire Day is in fact Order 66 year.
Empire Day.
So, yeah, Empire Day. Just got a gloss over the 19 baby. Never mind. So, Order 66 happens 19 BBY, so does the Empire's establishment, and thus that is Empire Day, and thus that is when
Empire
Ezra
Day.
is born. How many novels has the panelists read? Y, R, and J are included. That's a lot of math to do right now. But I know Choco keeps track.
I don't keep track of how many canon books I've read because they just keep coming out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
but
on
don't
the,
you have a number? You have a number sometimes.
I did have a number, and I've read a lot of books since then, and so I don't have that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you on the expanded universe side, I'm at 142.
That's wild.
It is.
And if you guys didn't know, Star Wars Darth Maul's Shadowhunter is going to be in the new wave of books that are being re-released. And if you are an audiobook fan, this one is read by Sam Witwer, which is pretty cool.
Oh, very exciting.
Time to revisit. So I'll say on the canon side, I've not read like 12 books. So the total of how many canon books there are minus 12. And then what hasn't
Fair.
come out yet?
So I have read all of the High Republic books. I've read every book that's been released in the past like 2 years except for the Thrawn books. So I'm missing the Thrawn books. That's probably the biggest series that I haven't read yet. But I've read a lot. I would say maybe about half of the canon books. I'm maybe about 50% of the way there, although the number keeps growing, as Choco referenced. Literally, I have a pile
Sorry. 14
already
books.
that's yeah, I was gonna say there's always a new one coming out. So a lot. And I would say the young reader ones, especially the young reader High Republic ones, have been really fun. So don't discount those, because I really enjoyed those ones.
Yeah, they're really good.
I have probably read the least, I would say, in terms of canon books. I read all the
Fern's
High
out here
Republic
reading
stuff.
literature and short stories and
I have a rule for
nonfiction personal
myself.
essays.
I have a rule for myself after last year, where I was just reading Star Wars stuff, and it got to me a little bit. I needed a break. So now I have a rule that I have to balance out Star Wars books and non-Star Wars books. And if I read a Star Wars book or two, I have to take a break and read something else in a different genre. And part of this is because I am like, God, this sounds obnoxious saying it out loud, but I am an
You're better
English
than
teacher.
us.
I feel like I sort of need to no, I feel like I have to keep up to date with, like, I gotta be reading things that I can recommend to students, and I absolutely do recommend Star Wars books to students all the time, but that's not going to appeal to everyone, so I try and read in lots of different genres. But I've read all the High Republic stuff. I read the Ahsoka novel, Lost Stars, Master and Apprentice, and then some others just like sprinkled throughout. And then back when I was a kid, I read a lot of the Jude Watson stuff and a lot of the like Clone Wars era, Wild Space, etc., which is my favorite non-canonical Star Wars book. I read Brotherhood, and now I've read Padawan, so that's sort of my list.
Yeah.
I don't have to keep up with, Shakespeare's been dead for 400 years, so thankfully
He's not coming out with anything new.
He's not coming out with new stuff, so I don't.
He's not
I
like
don't
Tupac.
No.
I'm sure he's got unfinished works.
And I'm writing my dissertation on video games, so like I've put myself in a nice sweet spot where like I don't actually have to read smart people books. I have successfully landed myself in a position where I don't have to read smart people books. I've read all of the Shakespeare. I get to teach that, and then I play video games and I write about them. So I haven't read a quote unquote serious literary novel in maybe 5 years. It's probably not good.
Hey,
I mean, you reread them for class. You teach them.
Yeah, I read like Paradise Lost. I read Frankenstein. I read, I do read stuff. I just reread them mostly. I don't read a lot of new stuff.
If you ever
I will
need
say
insight,
really quickly, on writers continuing to come out with things after they're dead. I've been just falling down a Tolkien rabbit hole recently, and I keep realizing that there's more. Like, I think, not that I think I'm caught up, but I think I have stock of like everything there is for me to read. And then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, there's another one that just came out. He's been dead for decades. But okay.
So it's a good segue to my question for Julia, because if you needed any insight into the video game industry and development in general for that, I am a game designer for Lord of the Rings Online. And with that said, you have absolutely no idea the extent of notes that we have access to. There's a lot.
That's great, because my dissertation is on adaptation in video games. So this is perfect, because it's about literary adaptation video games. So like adaptation of Hamlet, adaptation of Paradise Lost as video games. So Lord of the Rings Online would be perfect, because you could argue that it is an adaptation. So I might take you up on that.
Absolutely. No, it actually is. Like a lot of the things that happen away from the golden path is, up for interpretation, but it's mostly like adherence to the works and everything that Tolkien has to offer. Awesome.
That's so cool.
But I believe we were at the book club section of our show. Since you guys have not read it, Choco, is there any way you can do like a 3 or 4 sentence descriptor on what happened in chapters 22 to 28?
My deepest apologies, but I couldn't stop reading it, and so I finished it, and I can't recall where it ends, where that section ends.
It's the end. It's the end. It's the final part.
Oh, okay. That's easy then. It's an excellent section of the book. This is where, if you're following along with it, we started out with Jin being born, and we kind of got to see the galaxies changing, the political landscape of that, and how exactly the Empire, and specifically Krennic, has been maneuvering things in order to get Galen Erso on his side from the very beginning, like to a crazy degree of convincing the local government, like overthrowing local government to imprison him, and then the company he works for convincing them to let him go so that he can bring the Empire in to fix the problem, and it just kind of keeps going from that. So when we get to this final part, this is where all hell breaks loose. Essentially, Krennic's plan to keep Tarkin held up is starting to break, which was a genius plan. Krennic basically tipped off some smugglers that they had been using in order to take down protected worlds. They would arrange illegal arms shipments to these protected worlds, and because the Empire would show up and find these dangerous arms there, these worlds would lose their protected status so that they can now be fracked and mined and all their resources.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Yep.
There's a lot in this book. I think you guys would really enjoy it.
Absolutely.
If not just for those that stuff alone. Lyra is still proving to be the GOAT. Lyra is such a badass. We need more Lyra content for sure. But she's starting to put all these pieces together, but needs to be able to convince Galen. And this is when she's finally able to do so. So we get to see what their plan was to run, how they escape from Krennic. And we get to see, Saw Gerrera makes he was in a little bit earlier, but you can't have anything in this era without Saw Gerrera.
Yeah.
I think I just have a new slogan. It's
more like the Saw Gerrera.
Ayo. Oh, shout out to Julia. I think the most important, or the most interesting thing about this section of the book is peering into the inside of the Empire and Tarkin and Krennic's like jousting. They're maneuvering around Mos Amedda, around Palpatine, and gaining favor with their projects, and you realize that it isn't this well-oiled machine, this big machine that just kind of like pervades across the galaxy. There are people with their own ambitions. Choco, still mannequin, still so scary just now. But yeah, this is how we see it in Rogue One happening. Tarkin is all too thrilled to take over the special weapons program from Krennic and take the credit and have him relegated to his sciences and engineering. Then we, as Choco mentioned, we get to the part where they escape to Lamu, and then that's where it picks up in Rogue One. So an awesome book. If you guys want to know more about kyber crystals, crystallography, and Galen's research onto how things were made for Project Stardust, Jin's early days, and just in general how the Empire was facilitating their spread across the galaxy and kind of spreading the propaganda, with people saying, oh, the Jedi were trying to keep the power to themselves, and this is why they didn't let people have kyber crystals. And then at the end, when Galen's like, they were right, because if you give them to evil people, they'll make death lasers out of them. Of course they were right.
I did have a question for you, Pat. I'm curious what your thoughts were on. So there's a portion in the book where the work is stalled. Galen can't figure out how to use the crystals, because of some of their physical properties. And then he remembers that the Jedi speak of a light and a dark side of the Force. And so he realigns on what would be considered the night side of the crystal and is able to harness the power that way. I was curious what your thoughts were on that section. I know I'm not wording it properly, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't.
Okay.
But I'm assuming it has something to do with the illusion that there's a dark side to the crystals. But I don't think that is the case. I think in the way that you would bleed the crystal and compel it to do what you want, there is a way to do that scientifically.
And that's what my takeaway was to it, is he did things to kind of realign the crystal, because even in their study, he felt like he could almost sense the sentience of the crystal itself.
Yeah.
And is trying to do things to maneuver it to comply. And I thought it was like a very, very diet version of what would be considered bleeding the crystal in order to close.
At the very least, the scientific version, just kind of coming close to that. But when do you think we should have our roundtable on this book for the rest of the book club?
I am wanting to do it, and I believe you will be out of town in 2 weeks.
From the
Correct.
17th to the 21st, yes.
Okay. I mean, I can absolutely host it without you if you don't mind, or, I won't be here next week on the 6th, but I will on the 13th. So, yeah, we can do it on the 13th, right? What were the dates you just said?
I will be here on the 13th, yes.
Yeah, so we can arrange it for next week and make sure everyone in the book club knows.
All right. Apologies to our lovely guests. We're through that. And so now we get to the moment, the main segment. Yes.
This is just the dust cover. I have the book sitting over here, but
I did not get the hardcover version.
Yeah, I got
you
the...
didn't.
I
No. They didn't...
wish I had a
They
soft
spared
cover.
expense, apparently.
I mean, we didn't even get physical copies. We got
Yeah.
digital copies, so... Well,
Oh.
I actually didn't even... The podcast got digital copy.
Yeah, I bought this with my own human money.
Same. So
Oh,
you are
well,
welcome.
You
Which is
both
why I
are
got the
better
hardcover.
humans than we, because these are our arcs.
Oh,
Although I kind of want to maybe offline, Pep, you and I can practice so that we can pass books to one another.
yeah, you guys got to work on that. That's good.
Mhm.
Here
Wow,
we go.
whoa, it's
Whoa,
wow, the
yay.
magic of...
The magic of internet.
Dyad in the forest.
Unseen for generations. Okay. So, guys in the chat, I know that this book just came out on Tuesday. It is quite new, but we are excited to talk about it in detail and in length. We would appreciate it if you do not want to be spoiled, that you just kind of mute the stream and stay on and just give us your patronage and help us out in that way. Don't leave, because once this banner comes down, we will no longer be talking about spoilers, and you guys can rejoin the conversation. So thank you so much for sticking around and tuning in. Padawan. Let's talk about part 1, which I'm considering, as I wrote in the notes. Where are the notes? Let's see here.
So
Part
at the
1
Jedi
is...
Temple with Qui-Gon, with the finding of the ceiling engraving. Ooh.
So, this is the part where I was like super shook from the moment it happened, because Orla is my favorite in the High Republic, and any mention of Orla's name just sends me. And as soon as I read it, I was like, who's reading this book right now?
Beyonce?
It's incredible how things are starting to connect between eras now. I mean, phase 1's over, which means all of the books that they're releasing after the fact, timeline wise, can now introduce references to that timeline, and we get it in Orla, Jareni, and Comac Vitus. What were your guys' feelings upon learning this discovery?
Specifically the High Republic stuff?
Or just in general? I mean, we can talk about part 1 as a whole, but specifically, I'm asking, what did you think about
Sure.
his discovery of Orla's scratchings on the ceiling?
I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about this because from the moment we're sort of introduced to this setting of this old room that used to be one thing, but now it's used for something else, I sort of had this thought in my head, just to myself of I bet like the High Republic Jedi were here once, right? Like I bet that they were in this room at some point. And so then to see these two characters' names, two characters whom I love very much, was very exciting. And I have been thinking a lot recently, because I think the way that these characters are introduced is really smart. They've scratched their names on a wall, and Obi-Wan is thinking at one point about why they would have done this and how maybe they just wanted to put a physical mark on something, knowing that they wouldn't be there forever, but maybe this mark would be there forever. It's a way of saying, you know, we were here, we lived, we existed in a certain moment in time. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently, because when I was a kid, I was I liked to follow rules, right? I really liked rules, in the same way that Obi-Wan describes liking rules later on in this book. And I would never, you know, write my name on a bunk bed at summer camp or anything like that, even when my friends were. And I now regret that as an adult. I think about the fact that there are places that are important to me that have no, you know, physical mark that I was ever there. Like, no one will ever know that this was a place that I spent time in and I really loved and I had really important, significant experiences in. And that's kind of sad for me. Like, what would it have mattered if I had, you know, written my name in Sharpie on the wall or whatever?
Just because the marks you leave are on our hearts.
Yeah, well, yes, but there's something comforting. And I've been thinking about this a lot as well, because while I was reading this book, I was traveling with my family. And in a lot of these, we were in London and then we were in Lucerne, Switzerland. And in a lot of these tourist sites, people leave notes, right? And they scribble on walls. And I didn't do that this time around. But whereas that would have really annoyed me in the past, this time I was thinking, like, yeah, I understand that urge. I understand that urge to say, like, okay, you know, in July of 2022, I was here. And it's such a teenage thing as well, right? It's something my students do in my classroom. And so the idea that this discovery isn't just tying Obi-Wan to Orla and Comac as we know them, you know, towards the end of their sort of time in one case, you know, towards the end of some of these characters' lives or experiences in the Jedi Order, but it's connecting him specifically to when they were also Padawans.
Yeah.
I really thought it was really just well executed, like so many things in this book. It was a really smart move to have him discover these two characters, not in reading a book or, you know, doing homework, but in finding this sort of secret transgressive thing they did when they were kids.
Yeah. I mean, something that this book does really well, one thing I definitely want to mention is that the young adult genre, there's a lot of argument about, is it a genre? Is it just a marketing tactic? And I would say, if you want to argue that it is its own genre, it's books like this book that I think help make that argument, because it is thematic, it is structured in a way that, you know, everything that is implicit in this text is made explicit in a way. So Obi-Wan internally wanting to make a mark is going to be externalized in a literal way, and that could very easily feel kind of trite or obvious. And the fact that it doesn't, and it happens over and over again, where everything, he's such an internal character, eventually everything is internalized. And later in the book, and my favorite moment in the book, you know, there's this really fantastic moment. But yeah, Fern, that's a really great example of like how they're connected. I hadn't thought about the tactileness of it, but I thought it was a great example of like the balancing of his internal worries with like the things happening externally in the world, which is obviously also relevant to the planet they eventually find themselves on. It's just, the more I think about it, it's pretty expertly done in terms of there's nothing in this book that is irrelevant. It's a big book, and yet it is very concise in terms of how it's using every moment. So like Fern said, where he finds this carving, how it's sort of presented, all of this is being done in a pretty economical fashion. Just very impressive. I really, really loved this book. So
I love how you said concise. That's like the perfect word for this book, because going from Shadow of the Sith to this book, where Shadow of the Sith was kind of verbose in that regard, where there were some parts where I just felt like there was too much time spent on something, 3 or 4 extra words in a sentence that needed to be there. This book is super concise and just down to the point. And I loved how this made me think about Master and Apprentice in a way that's, Obi-Wan is paired up with Qui-Gon in this regard to be the opposite of Qui-Gon, to be the perfect Jedi. And then we get this sort of look into all of his insecurities and all of his doubts about himself being the perfect Jedi. And it's kind of like this wonderful tunnel going into Master and Apprentice where, hey, it wasn't successful in the beginning. He was trying so hard to satisfy Qui-Gon and be wanted by Qui-Gon and do everything that Qui-Gon wanted, and then suddenly in Master and Apprentice he's figured it out. He's not gonna be Qui-Gon whatsoever. He's gonna be the Jedi according to the books.
Yeah, I love how there's not much in this book that I didn't personally experience, and I feel like most of us, if not all of us, did, but all of us felt like we were the only people feeling it at the time. And the way, like you said, it shows his doubt, his uncertainty, because all of us hit an age when we're growing up where not everything is decided for us. You know what I mean? Like, once upon a time, you didn't choose your friends. Your mom would arrange a play date. And those people or your siblings or whatever, you didn't think about food. Like, you just juice boxes now. Oh, it's bedtime now. You didn't have to decide anything. And now you're forced to come to grips with you have to choose and things, and you have to start looking towards your future, and everyone else is having an easier time at this than I am. And why am I having a hard time? No one else seems to be struggling. All the while, you aren't showing that you're struggling, just like them.
Right.
And it part of it also reminds me a lot of the movie Into the Spider-Verse, when Miles first gets his powers and he's walking through his school, and the thoughts that are going through his head of oh my goodness, why do I feel like my body feels weird? Who's that? That person's super tall. And it's just like all these thoughts are just coming in, 1,000 miles per hour. And the crux of it is his inability to meditate. And I love how they use that as just this core, the meditation, super important because that's what's aligning you with the Force, and the way that they structured that to be a through line throughout the entire book. The book was, in my opinion, masterfully written. So some books are written where you feel like the author was chasing the story. They wrote here and they were chasing it towards the end. This one felt like it was birthed whole from someone and that's why it's so tight of a story.
I just wanted to read a passage from the first part that was talking about what Fern was talking about, or maybe like Orla and Comac, he wanted something of himself written on the temple that had written so much of who he was. I am
so
obsessed
good
with
that line.
I'm obsessed with it.
So beautiful.
Yeah. He wants to make his mark. And speaking of High Republic references, there's a line in this book, I think fairly early on, that is almost exactly how Elzar Mann describes how he wants to impact the galaxy. And I've been arguing for the fact that Obi-Wan isn't just Stellan. He is Stellan, Elzar, and Avar. He's all of them. He has features of all of them. And to see that line paralleled was really interesting to me, because Elzar as a character wants more than anything to help the galaxy, to use his powers to be the Jedi to help the galaxy. That's what he wants more than anything. And so does Obi-Wan. And so that little phrase there, if I can find it, was also really exciting for me, someone who finds that connection, because I think it would be easy to say, oh, he's like Stellan, he's like this character. But no, going to someone like Orla is better than that, because it explores this uncertainty that he has. He's not looking up to someone like Stellan and following this path. He's something Fern, I'm sure we'll talk about, we were talking about what we wanted out of this book, you mentioned, Fern, how important it is to you for him to choose to be a Jedi, for that to be an active choice he has after an experience of knowing he can choose otherwise. And I think that's very much something that the Wayseeker concept, I think, allows him to think about in a different way. And I love this book. I could gush about it forever. So
speaking
he's
of
literally
Wayseeker,
acting as a Wayseeker. Like that's what he's doing.
Literally, yeah, exactly.
it's great to see the canonization of the fact that, or of the thought that Qui-Gon would be a Wayseeker.
Yeah.
You could put to bed the Gray Jedi
yeah, I was gonna
problem.
say it puts to bed the Gray Jedi thing. Thank God. I don't know why I hate it so much.
Well, I mean, it's frustrating, but yeah, accidentally wayseeking Obi-Wan Kenobi, like, oops, wayseeking is just is very amusing to me because he kind of falls into doing things a lot, which I think is amusing for someone who tries to plan his life so impeccably. A lot of his story is just ending up in situations he didn't plan to be in. So seeing him handle that in like a very early version of handling that was really exciting. You're gonna have to show me. I'm a big fan of this book. Also, the kid that bullied him, you can meet me outside. You can meet me outside.
Well, you know what happened to him, right?
Yeah, he gets what he deserves. You're right.
Okay. Well, okay. In an attempt to I guess in your words shut you up, I do have to ask Fern, how did you feel about learning more and getting more of Siri than just the hand?
That was my first thought. I read Siri and I was like, Fern.
Exciting. So I have been saying on TikTok and Twitter the past few days, this book is for the Jude Watson girlies. If you read any of the Jude Watson books as a kid and they influenced your understanding of Obi-Wan as a character in any way, the version of Obi-Wan you are going to see here in this book is going to ring true to you. At least it rang true to me. And Siri being a part of Obi-Wan's life was just a part of that, right? I think it goes beyond that. I don't think it's just these references to the Jude Watson books that makes that connection clear, but that's obviously the first thing that sort of sets the signals off of like, oh, there are parallels here. I do think that and by necessity, I think right now her character is sort of being treated as like relatively flat. We don't know much about her other than she's a cool badass Padawan who's going on cool important missions with her master, and she and Obi-Wan were close in their youth, but they're not as close anymore, which sort of follows the trajectory that we see in the Jedi Apprentice books. I get why that is the case though, partially because the book is of course not about her, and the relationships Obi-Wan forms later on in the book are more important to sort of the overarching plot of this particular novel, but also because I know if I were writing a Star Wars book and I had the opportunity to write this character who was invented by a writer I really look up to and admire, I wouldn't necessarily want to touch that, right? Without her input, without like knowing how she feels. Like she doesn't speak very often about Star Wars like publicly on Twitter these days. I don't know how she feels about any of the new canon, and so I would definitely want to be really careful not to mischaracterize Siri Tachi or any of those Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest characters. That being said, just seeing her and like hearing her talk was wonderful. It brought me right back to, the way I felt when I was 12 years old reading those books for the first time. So it was a win for me personally.
I have a headcanon now that your phone background is a picture of Siri Tachi, Fern, and Julia's background is Follower of Paul being electrocuted to death by Cad Bane. That's my current head. That's my current head.
Shouldn't have bullied Obi-Wan. I get you. I don't know what to tell you. He's a child. I don't care. It was mean of them.
Yeah,
they were mean.
You know what's so great is to know that Siritachi is going to grow up and she's gonna have a Padawan, and I really wonder what that Padawan's name is.
Siritachi's unnamed Padawan.
Siritachi is unnamed Padawan, canon.
As seen in Brotherhood.
As seen in Brotherhood. I would love to know their name.
What about Karis Poland, perhaps?
No, I think it's
you almost got it.
I think it's Barris Tolan.
We're close. We got to workshop it a little more, but I think we'll get there.
Ferris Roland. I don't know.
You know what? That sounds almost.
Yeah, that sounds almost right. I think we're close. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, not to jump ahead in the book, but just for this like small little moment, it is cool to for Obi-Wan to kind of like, you know, ruminate just slightly when he says, even if I were to have a relationship, I don't even know if Siri would be open to that, like he says later on. And it kind of gives credence to at least a canon version of the story where they had explored that in the past. You know,
she's a mean blonde. I think it's just
he has a type. Mean blondes.
Mean blondes, like cooler, you know, doing things that
competent women,
the type of women he likes. Type of men. I mean,
it sounds like he'd be interested in Julia Christine.
No, that's not relevant here at all. This isn't okay. In my head, this makes sense. I consider Commander Cody a blonde because his armor is yellow.
No, yeah.
No, that works for me.
And he's competent.
Absolutely.
And he's competent and kind of mean. Like he's not mean. He doesn't have that warmth, but like Obi-Wan doesn't want that. He doesn't want someone who's like nice to him. Literally the passage later where Kiersten White is describing a future person, you know, that he would fall in love with. She describes that person exactly how I think of her, and that was very exciting for me. But yeah, and it's very funny for him to be like, I wonder if Siri would. I feel like Siri has like said.
I think she'd be down.
I think she'd be down. I don't know. Like it's very Obi-Wan
down to clown.
Yeah, it's very Obi-Wan for him in his head to be like, I wonder, like he's like doing like the mental math about it. I just thought that was really cute. Everything he does in this is so cute. He is just such a bumbling teenager, but also like, anyway, I
couldn't help but read this and be like, I really need a time traveling young Obi-Wan to hang out with Ram. I don't know why. I just nice specifically like him with Ram and Wreath, and one of them's like, let's go read stuff.
Let's go read stuff.
Anyway, that's just kind of my pick. But
really quickly, shout out to Connor. Don't worry about those jokes. We're gonna leave that there to be immortalized in the internets.
It's a very good joke. I want to say it's a stellar joke.
It is.
We get. I mean, I do want us to be able to kind of move forward into the next section here. So, you know, we get Obi-Wan waiting for Qui-Gon, and then he starts spiraling in the worst ways of like, oh my goodness, well, Qui-Gon's not coming. Well, if Qui-Gon's not coming, maybe it's because he's left. And if he left the Jedi Order, then who would I go back to? Would anyone else want me? If he left, is it my fault? Is it because I wasn't a good enough Padawan? Or is that his fault? And if it was my fault, then clearly no one else will want me as a Padawan. Like, and it just starts going on and on. In the most real way possible. And he's like, you know what? It's out of character for me, but I'm just gonna go. And you know, thus begins the journey. And I love like even the second he leaves, he's like, who the hell do I think I am?
Literally Obi-Wan's Rapunzel moment. Obi-Wan's this is the best day ever. What have I done? Moment. So beautiful.
I feel like somewhere along the way there was an internal monologue where all he heard was Qui-Gon just saying, "Your focus determines your reality." He's just like, if I focus on all of the things, then everything will be my reality.
Yeah. Yeah, his anxiety is presented in a way that, like, first of all, hashtag relatable. Like you said, I think this is a very teenager thing of like figuring out who you are, and especially if you were like kind of a high-strung teenager, the idea that there's perfection that must be attained, that's very relatable. But I also think there's a through line in terms of, I obviously am thinking a lot about brotherhood here, but because I think they pair really well in terms of the internal monologue, in terms of what we get of Obi-Wan here, kind of unrestrained anxiety, unpolished, full of insecurity, moving towards a version of himself that is able to, he has the same impulse. You can see the same sort of spiraling begin multiple times, and he's able to relax and move on from that, or sort of shut it down. And that sort of internal development is something that I find very satisfying. But you know, it could very easily get annoying. Every page, Obi-Wan is stressing out about something. Literally every page of the book.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a page where he isn't like having an anxiety attack about something. That could easily become irritating or sort of wear on you, but it doesn't. He is written so truthfully and so engagingly that it's not, you know, the fact that he's going through this over and over again, essentially ruminating. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you write it in a way that doesn't get old, because I found it incredibly engaging. So
yeah,
Same.
there were even parts in the later sections where he had reached balance, and then suddenly he's back to it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, how
Relatable.
did he do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and jump into the next section here. But I will say that this book has whet my appetite for Cantum Side book when, because it would be the same book but adult.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh! Yeah,
I want-
it
Well,
is.
I have
Same
to
book,
say,
adult.
I'll say here so that I'll get it out of the way. There is an unfinished trilogy of Obi-Wan's Padawan trials here. We have Padawan, we have Master and Apprentice, we have the third unwritten book that we all know about. These three are working, the idea that he has these trials in terms of like choosing to be a Jedi, what kind of Jedi he wants to be. He has this one in which he chooses to be a Padawan. He has Master and Apprentice in which he finally gets on board with his master, his teacher. You gotta have that third book where he's like,
The
Oh,
ultimate
no.
test, if
The
you will.
ultimate test of his loyalty to the Jedi. It's right there. It's
But, like,
right
we were-
there.
We need
We're-
two more books. I'm sorry. So obviously the
Okay.
obvious book that we're all thinking, you know, A Year on the Run, a Pit of
Mhm.
Scorpions, whatnot.
Mhm.
But also, Star Wars lawyer Chris said, you know what, we need another book that's kind of a sequel to Master and Apprentice, where it's Obi-Wan and Anakin
Mhm.
who run into Pax and Rahara again and see the growth of the character. And then Rahara was a slave and Anakin, and then they're like, what happened to the other guy? And he's like, that's just
Anyway, I'm
I
saying
know.
so far he's gone through 2 trials of choosing to be a Jedi, and he needs his third, final, and hardest trial.
Yes.
And if they
as
don't
we
write this
know-
book, they don't write this book, they're throwing money in a garbage can. I don't understand. They would make so much money. It's insane to me that they haven't written this book.
Welcome to Julia's Soapbox. Thank you for attending Julia's Soapbox. No, I mean, so we just did an episode on how you can read Star Wars as a fairy tale, and patterns and trials are sort of textbook tropes of the fairy tale, and so it absolutely tracks that for this character who is presented as an archetypal knight, right, and you know, shining Jedi Knight, that he would be tested 3 times and have to pass each time, and there is a reward for that, and the reward is his fully coming into his identity as a Jedi, like fully
the reward is
taking up that
Anakin.
mantle. Well, and the reward is also a secret baby that he
Yeah.
doesn't know about. But you know, it's all very fairy tale. And yeah, Julia's right. That's like a book just waiting to happen. So
Secret
Julia's available to
baby.
write it. I'm just gonna put your stuff out there.
Yeah.
Lucasfilm, if
I've
you're
only been
listening.
thinking about this for my entire
I
life.
mean-
That's not true.
Fulcrum Transmissions. You could find. Just to answer the question in the chat, Padawan takes place when Obi-Wan is 16. I don't have a clear baby on that one, but If you guys are better at math than I am.
41. Because Master and Apprentice takes place in 40. Shout out to Kiersten White and Padawan for taking Obi-Wan was 15 when he meant a teen and slam dunking it into a trash can. I will be forever grateful for you because you have made the math so much better. You're setting that up for me. It's never going to happen, but I appreciate the attempt. So Kiersten White, thank you for helping me in my quest for a timeline that makes sense.
Connor says, I think we need a trilogy as Obi-Wan as a Padawan. I think that's what they mean. Yeah. Just in general, his time as a Padawan is extended, to say the least. More than
I was agreeing. I just wanted that other book as like a capstone on top of like, this is my journey, and then now I'm bringing up this person to go through a similar journey, and he's not going to finish it properly, but still.
So in this section of the book, he lands on a planet called Lenara, or as they call it, and he meets the indigenous people, not indigenous, but he meets inhabitants on this planet who seem to be force sensitive. They're hopping around doing all kinds of gymnastics and kind of making him think that they are using the force or the power, as they call it. And
extreme parkour ensues.
Yes, parkour.
Survival parkour, or else the planet will eat you.
The planet is actively trying to murder them. That's an important thing to recall.
And I think this whole section of the book, because I think I've kind of painted this section as from the landing to the arrival of who I'm calling Liev Schreiber in my mind.
That works.
Yeah, I mean,
He was Saren from Mass Effect in my mind.
But like this section of the book is so dang valuable for people who want to understand the Force and balance in the Force. Mm-hmm. And it's so beautifully written in a way that it's not overtly about the Force. It's about this inner cycle or this symbiotic cycle within an ecosystem of itself that has nothing to do with like the cosmic force, has nothing to do with anything else. It's just like this is this planet's cycle, and this is how it works to provide but also exchange with what it provides for. And I guess we can go off of that. What were the things that like were your thoughts on this section and like the planet and the people that were living there, and why your favorite characters are Shush, Trill, and Whistle?
Oh man.
I love how Obi-Wan's like, oh, I should just leave, but then he sees those kids in those barrels and it's like, well, I gotta get them out of the barrels. I have to get them out of here. What am I gonna do? I can't leave them in their barrels, and has to find a way to save them.
Every time he fell asleep, he just
saw
Kit Fisto.
So this not confirmed, but this provided evidence for one of my favorite dumb headcanons that I have, and my best friend I think came up with this headcanon, which is that someone has to follow Kit Fisto around with a squirt bottle and just kind of keep him moisturized all day, and that's sort of like the duty of his Padawan, is like one of his jobs is to just squirt him down with a little bottle. Like in that one episode of Doctor Who.
Moisturize.
Anyway.
Rub some jerkins on them or something. No, I had to maybe turn on Men in Black to see when the little squid baby is born, and I just had to picture that. I picture, it was adorable. Before it spit up on them. Picture them kind of floating around in a little tub. It's lids on, kids. It's lids on. It's so cute. Everything was adorable in this book.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, so this book, there are many reasons why I feel like this book was psychically extracted from my head and Julia's head, and sort of placed in a crystal that then manifested to become this book. But part of it is that I love a shipwreck narrative, and I love specifically these plucky young kids have been shipwrecked, and they need to, you know, find strength in each other and care for each other in order to survive. And so when I discovered that this planet was inhabited by these feral children, they're described as like feral kids, and these babies essentially that they are responsible for, it just hit something for me. And Julia said at one point, as we're, you know, I'm furiously like live texting my reading experience to her, that this feels like, Julia, you said it felt like a book you would have read over and over as a kid.
I would have been obsessed with that 14
again and again.
If I was 13, 14
and
when this
same,
book
I
came
felt
out,
the exact same way.
it has a level of like, I felt like this is a book that has always existed. Like it feels like this has always been a story that Obi-Wan was in. And I think part of that is the fact that it plays into a lot of familiar tropes in a really positive way. The coming of age story, shipwreck story, the sort of, you know, Lost Boys story. Like it's doing all of those things in a way that is comforting.
Found family.
Yeah, comforting and familiar, but sort of putting a new spin on it. But yeah, I would have been obsessed with this book as a like a young teen in a way that I can't really describe, and would have destroyed the library's copy of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was just go for it.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, I know I mentioned earlier the sort of internal, external. I love this planet. I love it so much because it is the perfect way to externalize the concept of balance and the idea of greed and fear. Like, you know, the fact that they're afraid.
Capitalism.
They take from this planet because they're afraid, because they want to protect each other, and become angry when it's threatened to be taken away from them, right? Like it is the perfect example of a place that didn't need, they were taken care of, they were safe, they were sort of protected, and that fear led them to think they needed more. And it's just a perfect example of the sort of cycle of the dark side in a completely different way, in a sort of environment that is different from what we would understand, but I think it just really beautifully encapsulates that. And seeing Obi-Wan's Disney princess, all the forest creatures, you know, coming to him and seeing that level of balance, I think it can be really useful to have explicit external shows of things that are hard to understand. Like, what does balance mean? It means a planet in a natural cycle of life and death, one that is not trying to kill the things on it, right? It doesn't mean that they'll never die. It means that it's not actively trying to destroy them because they're actively stealing from it. And I just a brilliant idea to sort of have a physical version of that when Obi-Wan's dealing with the same sort of like internal cycle of uncertainty.
Okay, thank you, first of all, because now I'm picturing you and McGregor singing Once Upon a Dream. And it's and it's excellent. But yeah, just like you said, how it also exemplifies the difference between power and the dark side, which is quick to join you in a fight. And it's the easier path. How much more powerful you are when you're one with the Force. And once upon a dream, you know.
Yeah.
Also, the little rock creatures are just adorable, and I love them. They're just like knocking your ankles around.
Oh my gosh, the moment he came back and Emmett was on top of a gobbler and she was like fluffy, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most adorable thing ever.
I also would like to bring up the significant archaeology that the archaeology plot twist. There's something about Obi-Wan Kenobi going into a cave and discovering a mural. I wish I had my notes, but I don't have notes because I didn't have a physical copy of the book. But there's this great moment where Obi-Wan is starting to piece together exactly what is going on here and what is amiss here, and realizes that this is something that has happened before, that these children are not the first people on this planet, that there were sort of horrific consequences to the path that they are currently on. And we once again connect back to we are reminded of the fact that Orla was here at one point, right? That she also discovered this mural, and she noted it, and she left a message for anyone who would come after her to this place. And I will say this was sort of the first time that I really felt the weight of like Orla's role in the High Republic and sort of what happens to her in the final book of the first phase, right? I hadn't fully processed it until I read about Obi-Wan Kenobi finding like these notes that she left behind. And I sort of had the emotional experience I have when I think about like Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, hearing the voices of all the Jedi, and that means the High Republic Jedi too, and it's like a very emotional experience for me. I had that same moment thinking about Obi-Wan standing in this cave, seeing the art that was left behind by a society that was trying to warn people about what happened if you followed a certain path on this planet, and where he finds these notes that Orla has left behind for him.
Yeah, and she's like, I gotta go help a friend. I'm like,
oh no,
oh buddy,
And it makes me think that the planet that she does bring Ezra back to is Lanara, to train him to seek balance, because she talks about verdant blues and greens on that planet when you know that book starts, and they're doing the initial training and before they have to go back to the Starlight Beacon. And it would be the perfect planet to teach balance.
It's true.
That also might explain
but I think there was
Elzar's reaction to Geode. He's like, that's beautiful. What is it? I love it.
Do I bow down to it? What do I do?
I will have to, because I don't want us to go too far without truly getting into Obi-Wan's feelings, especially with these kids, because he's realizing like, I've been so structured and wound and focused on my future and becoming a Jedi, and these kids are just floating along and doing their thing, and isn't this fun, and isn't this nice, and I could so easily and he does one of the things that personally hit me very close to my home, of if you making no decision is the same as making a decision, and there's times where he can choose, should I stay, should I leave? If I do nothing, then that choice will be made for me, and he has to like actually actively consider all these things all of the time. And it just, like I said, it was written so organically in his voice that I love it. And I need to hear your guys' thoughts on just his interactions with the kids and how it affects him, and the comparison between that and what he experienced growing up in the Jedi Temple.
Zabri is a boss.
Yeah.
Yes. Love that.
Bitch and a boss.
Yeah. Well, I think, his natural instinct is to help people, and I think that really being the thing that encourages him, like, to do what he can to return, because in order to sort of rescue them, it means sort of leaving, is important. But Fern, I feel like you have so much to say here, and I'm looking for a particular passage, so.
Yes, you look for your passage. So I don't want this entire episode to be me tying things back to the Jude Watson books, but I will say this. So I have spoken many times before about how, and this is something I said in the episode of Star Wars English class that Julia and I did as a sort of character study for Obi-Wan, which throughout the book, there are several moments that I think we ended up designating as LWS, which stands for like we said. Like we said in our episode, Obi-Wan is like this, or he thinks this, or he does this. And one of those, like we said, moments for me is that it is very important to my understanding of Obi-Wan Kenobi that he has this sort of crisis of faith moment where he steps away from the Jedi Order and he decides that there is something else that is more compelling or that he's being drawn to, that he for a little while chooses instead. And I haven't read this, like the book where this actually happens, in a really long time. So like my memory of it is very fuzzy, but it definitely impacted every other idea I've ever had about him as a character. That in those books, he leaves the Jedi Order formally to join this group of young freedom fighters who are fighting for the liberation of their homeworld. That's very important to him. He connects with these other young people, these teenagers, and feels that they are, doing what they can to fight for something they believe in and make a difference in the world. And that is more important to him than, like, he feels so strongly about that he ends up leaving the Order. And then he realizes that was the wrong choice for him, that he didn't understand the full situation, that there were complexities and nuances that he was just not privy to as an outsider. And he eventually realizes, like, the place where he can do the most good, like the place he is called to and where he belongs, is with the Jedi, even when that doesn't feel natural to him, even when that's not easy for him. And so it's so important to me that we're getting a version of that story here. It's not, exactly the same, but that Obi-Wan meets these kids who are living their lives freely, and that is attractive to him, that's compelling to him. He just connected, like, even when it's rough, even when they're teasing him or they don't get him, right? Like, he feels a sense of just belonging with these kids very, very quickly. And it would be not easy for him to stay. That's something he's grappling with, but that feels like a really compelling choice. Like that feels like an option for him. And so, and there are things about that choice that make sense to him in that moment. And so, I mean, like, of course, all the interactions are great. I don't really know how to pronounce any of these characters' names, since I haven't heard many people say them out loud yet, but how are we pronouncing Kazel? How are we saying his name?
Castle.
Castle?
I've been saying Kazel.
I've been
saying Kazel too. Okay. I'm going to say Kazel, but, to each their own. So,
I did,
like his little crush on Obi-Wan and the way he turns sort of surly when Obi-Wan, sort of kind of rejects him. They feel very real. They feel like 16-year-olds. They feel like teenagers, right? In a way that I think especially Star Wars sometimes doesn't quite pin down, because we have to remember that this is like a world where kids aren't really kids. 14-year-olds rule planets, right? Like these are not, their definition of childhood is not our definition of childhood. And yet these teenagers very much felt like real teenagers. So that was great too.
Yeah, I found the passage I was looking for that was relevant to what you were saying. This is on page 160. He's talking about whether to stay or go. The others would accept him here, would let him stay. He'd have a home on Lenara. Maybe that was what Orla had been seeking too. Maybe that's why she had never updated her record. Maybe she ran here too and never left. Because going back to Coruscant would be an act of faith. Faith that he could face whatever was waiting for him at the temple, even if it meant no longer having a future as a Jedi. The idea of an act of faith being written explicitly in that line was really like a exciting moment, I think, for both of us, because it's placing his trust and faith in this system that is, he understands, flawed, but is what he sees as the best way to serve the galaxy through the Force. And there's so much of that is central to who he is as a character. So this idea of it being an act of faith is an interesting way of looking at it, but I think very much true to who he is. And just really exciting, like we said, moment for us there. Yep. But they're so, I also mentioned, I like that none of the characters are, the other children are human. I think that's really important. I think it sort of lends to the sense of lack of familiarity, but also they're similar but different, right? It's another example of like, they are like him but not like him, in a really kind of obvious but very sort of important way. So I like that.
And this is something that's made explicit, right? Like they Kazel specifically talks about how he's very visually confusing, right? He has too much hair on his head and not enough hair on the rest of his body. He is like noticeably visually other to them. Which is so interesting because so much of his experience on this planet is an active defamiliarization for him. There's one part where he's talking about how, okay, this planet seems really hostile. Why would these, kids live here? Well, if you think about it, a lot of planets are hostile. If you think about it, Earth is hostile, right? I've lived in a state that's constantly on fire and the ground moves sometimes, and now I live in a state where water falls from the sky so hard it breaks buildings. Right. And so he's very thoughtful, and he's able to sort of recognize that his experiences are not universal, and that what seems strange to him on this planet is normal for these kids. And in fact, he is the strange one. He is the alien here on this world.
And that's what I really liked too, because I have been othered for most of my life. And seeing that, they called him sky trash like for half of the book, which you're like, come on, man. Man, and even he's like, hey, you guys, I have like different types of food. You guys want to try that? And my wife is Mexican, and like first generation, American, where having a burrito at lunch for school would be normal for her, but like othered for everyone else. Like, no, I wouldn't try that or whatever. Like, eat your sandwich. And you're like, you prefer a sandwich to a burrito? Are you brain dead? It was just I really did enjoy how they portrayed that, because this is where they have been for generations, and portraying the human as the outsider, something we just don't ever get in Star Wars. We get humans walking into a cantina and seeing how strange everything else is, which it is strange, especially if you watch A New Hope, and you're like, that's a giant ant. And that looks like Satan, as he's always depicted. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a refreshing take. And we need more aliens. And having a changeling as a core to the story, so cool. And I wish we got more of them.
And relevant and thematic, and they're stuck in a sense of like they can't leave because they're afraid of what will happen if they leave, and they feel like this is the safest place to be. Like, it's just all there.
And the generational trauma of it all as well, right? Like, we have to stay here because our parents sacrificed so much for us to be here. And yes, they died young, tragic deaths, but that's what they did for us so that we can have this life and we can have this power. And of course we can't leave. And that's so firmly rooted in these kids' ideology, because of course it is. That was another just like really well executed element of this book.
That's what makes me think that part of this part of the book about the planet is an allegory to climate change, because this is what our parents left for us. They wanted us to have this power, and we're not going to
screaming and things on fire.
yeah, things are fine. But it's like, reading about how the planet would sustain everyone if you did not see it as an adversary. But once the people start treating it as an adversary, then it would become an adversary.
Yeah.
And just to kind of juxtapose what Fern said about, Earth being innately hostile, I don't think it is. I think Earth is just Earth, right? And then what we imposed on Earth had its consequences, and therefore it throws its storms at us, and we're just like, stop being hostile, and then the Earth is just like, I'm just being me, so
it's the Bendu.
Obi-Wan shows up with this dangerous message of environmentalism. God damn it.
The Disney agenda. Disney and their agenda.
Disney woke agenda.
Not gay environmentalist Obi-Wan Kenobi. Get out of here. Get your agenda out of here.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm hearing merch. I'm hearing a merch opportunity t-shirt. Gay environmentalist Obi-Wan Kenobi. That one's free for anyone who wants it. Yeah. Just send it to me, please.
You guys can jump on it if you want.
Yeah, we
don't make merch, but we have a lot of ideas.
Yeah, we have a lot of
Listen, if you made a shirt that just said woke agenda, I think that would sell. I think
Obi-Wan Kenobi's woke agenda.
I think our winning piece of merch is gonna say Star Wars English class, anti-enlightenment, pro Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
We'll make that shirt happen. All proceeds will go to you guys.
I'm gonna arrange a meeting with you guys after this, and I'm gonna walk through the process because Julia, you love Canva, and you can just put this on a shirt.
I'm not good at it. I'm not a graphic designer though. I just like making dumb little pictures.
No, I will. I will set up a store for you, and you can throw up whatever designs you want. And
can I put an X through like? Whose face would it be? I'd have to pick an environment.
It'd be Baller Paul's face, okay?
I'd have to pick an Enlightenment era figure to be the face of who's going to be in the Ghostbusters.
We've picked one. Who did we pick? I don't remember. We'll have to go back and listen to our
point being that I think this book is also anti-enlightenment because, as you were saying, Obi-Wan realizes that like there is different types of like this context and truth almost in terms of like what you're trying to achieve and what your context is. Like you said with defamiliarization, Fern, he's realizing that there are other options, and just the idea that this is Obi-Wan being introduced to the idea of options, and that one version is Orla, still a Jedi, but sort of seeking her own path through what the Force calls her to, versus like the rumors that Dooku has left the Jedi and that Qui-Gon's gonna leave, and that sort of, an option is to leave the Jedi and sort of how frightening that is, versus staying and being a Padawan. Not to like just keep reading, but this is the part that really reminded me of Elzar, is he's talking about, this is towards the end, but I just have to say it now. He says, the true purpose of my life is to be a servant of the Force. If that's no longer possible as a Jedi, then so be it. I'll find other ways to help. And that's pretty much exactly what Elzar says, that like that is his reason for existing, is to be a servant of the Force. And then later, when he meets Luke Skywalker, which I can't, again,
the fact that happened.
He says like, we're not the only game in town, but if, we'll be here. Like, seeing that all come full circle and seeing all of that connected, like the line from Elzar to Obi-Wan to Luke, and the idea of choosing the Jedi Order, it's just like, it's so beautiful. I can't really express how much that means to me. Like, I'm gonna cry now thinking about it.
Yep. No, you just like, because I mean, you hit me with the shotgun of it, but it all rolls up together, especially when you get to Luke in The Last Jedi, where he, especially as Ryan Johnson says it, he thinks that at this point in time, maybe the light needs to rise from a different source other than the Jedi, because being a Jedi is, like you said, it's not the only game in town. And the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi talks about in the book Padawan makes it clear that all of these younglings know that you don't have to be a Jedi. It's not required, but they all want to, and they're all heading towards that direction. That's the destiny they want to fulfill, and it's so beautiful, because in the end, with all of these things happening, with all of his emotions, with all the things that he's feeling physically, he can't. So he comes to the conclusion that yes, staying here would be great for me, but I can't do that for me. I have to serve the galaxy. And what did George Lucas say about the light and dark? At its core, it's selfless versus selfish, and he is compelled to do the selfless thing. And then that goes back to Qui-Gon Jinn. Why do we choose light? We choose it because it is the light.
Yeah, that's another dyad moment, because before you started speaking, I was going to bring up the dynamic between learning that they could be Force sensitive and learning that it wasn't the Force, and the dynamic between Obi-Wan and the kid and the younglings changed. Yeah. Right? It was a very visible shift from like, oh, this could be my life. They have the Force and they're doing things different from the Jedi, and this is how I could operate. But then like he learns that they don't have the Force. They are taking this thing, and his prognosis for the younglings change, and his mission changes from there on out. And so just to kind of, as we are approaching overtime on the show, just to kind of push us into the end of this book, where Liev Schreiber comes in, or Logrib arrives, and it is these kids' uncle, long lost uncle, and everyone's happy.
It wouldn't be a fairy tale without an evil step
Conniving,
uncle.
yes.
Exactly.
Who's going to steal the magic.
Yeah. And
this is also the sequel trilogy in the nutshell from the kids' perspective. Like, we now have the family that we've been longing and saying for, but they're evil. And it's just
true.
There's so many layers to this book. It is redundant.
Family is more than blood.
Yeah. And I just love how this part starts with so much hesitance and pushback from the younglings because their family has come back. Mm-hmm. And like they're so belligerent towards Obi-Wan suddenly because he suggests something different, like, maybe this isn't the case, maybe he's got ulterior motives. And I just love how kind of the crux of Oj and the rest of the younglings coming around is seeing him floating in the forest in this snow white moment of like surrounded by gobblers and avalanchers and trees, just like, oh, and there's like, how are you doing this? And that moment is beautiful because it leads into the younglings riding cobblers and calling them pets and stuff. But it was a beautiful moment when the younglings finally reached this agreement or this conclusion that they could live in peace with the planet.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the end.
Because
happens.
it was an abstract concept, and then it became real physically because Kiersten White knows what she's doing and was like, I'm gonna build it up. They're not gonna believe. Obi-Wan's gonna have a hard time believing, and then these two stories are going to converge into one plot point because this book is
really well done.
It's just really well done.
It okay. So hey, we also. So there's the grass is always greener on the other side mentality when Obi-Wan looks at the freedom that these kids have and realizes that that they are all just as entrenched as he is. It's just different. Mm-hmm. They're just different cells. I that's probably not the best way to put it, but it's. I don't know. I'm in love. I'm in love with the way you guys are talking about this book right now, and I'm feeling like all this, and it's beautiful. We're
gonna get a good practice. We're gonna do Castle Run transmissions tomorrow, and then eventually we're gonna film our own podcast. You're gonna get so much of us talking about this book.
We're just on a press tour.
Yeah, we're doing a press tour.
Do it. I'm excited to hear it all. So the final book. So the final section. What did you guys think of Logrib? What did you guys think of just the younglings and how it all ended?
The fact that this is I think that this phrase has become sort of cliche, but the idea that healing is not linear for these kids, right? They start to have this moment of making peace with this planet and realizing that, okay, yes, this was what our parents wanted for us, but maybe there are other options, right? Options being this sort of recurring trend in this book. And then all of a sudden this long lost uncle shows up, and we know he has ulterior motives because we see certain scenes from his perspective, right? But also because we have read fairy tales before and we've watched the movies before, and we know that he's up to no good. This is a sort of relapse moment for these kids. It's not as simple as, well, uncle, like, we think, maybe it's not great for us to be here. Maybe we shouldn't mess with this anymore. Like, they kind of think that maybe they can persuade him. But they are immediately on his side for the most part. Because, of course, this feels completely reasonable. Though we sit here reading, no, how could you, suddenly turn on Obi-Wan again?
And if you don't mind me adding, there's an element
Yeah.
of propaganda of
Yeah.
like Obi-Wan is like, oh no, we need to like do this and for these reasons, and we have evidence of this. For no, he's a Jedi. They have the ability to control your minds.
Mhm.
That's what
Yeah.
he's doing.
Yep.
Yeah. Once again, Obi-Wan is like, but I did research and I have a PowerPoint, and doesn't understand why that's not working. For he's like, they're being corrupt.
He's
How
on Fox
dare they?
News and
I
he's
did
using
research. Yeah, exactly. He does that a lot. Where I'm like, buddy, this you got to learn. They don't care about your
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
And before we move forward, I do have to ask Choco, how did you feel about that moment where a certain basilisk met Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time?
I turned into SpongeBob when he turned into a rocket and flew up and exploded. I was like, he had a distinctive silhouette. Okay, I'm gonna read this and like I'm like, okay, okay. It's weird. It's become weird how much of my Club Shadow has become. But I'm starting to tear up, and I'm like, could it be? It is.
I mean, it's just pure joy. I just love that Dexter Jettster becomes important to Obi-Wan's life because Dexter Jettster sees child endangerment and is like, okay,
damn.
fine, I'll help you. Like,
This isn't what I signed up for.
he's like, I was just trying to do a job, and now these children are in danger. I guess.
So I've always loved Dex, and I don't know why, but I realize now it's because I identify with Dex because he's like, oh, this is messed up. I ain't doing this. Like, and Dex has my reaction, and I've never seen it before, but I think I've instinctively known that, like, he's just like,
He says
yeah,
what
I'm
a
gonna
lot of
tell
us
you
are
my whole-
thinking.
yeah. Basically, he's just a reasonable person,
Yeah.
and
I
it's
was gonna say,
refreshing
yeah.
in this weird polarized world of like, oh yeah, no, I know that like 2 other ships died and all of their crew, whatever. We're gonna mine this stuff and we're gonna leave these kids to die or whatever. Also, why don't we put some explosives on that kid's like ship?
Yeah.
And he's like, that's bad. I don't know
What
what,
if
else
I
to say, but can we
didn't
not
do
do
that?
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Poke
Yeah.
Nation says in the chat was not expecting Dex. I was not expecting Dex at all.
I literally, I
Kinda
felt
was a little bit,
I-
just because
Yeah.
like if we're gonna get a Dex origin story, this felt like a good place to have a Dex
Dexter
like, not
Jettster
Dex origin
origins.
story, not but origins of his relationship with Obi-Wan. But it was also it was
Dex-Men
very
origins.
exciting.
Exactly.
Oh.
It just,
Oh.
yeah, he is a
I'm sorry, I
he's a
didn't mean to-
reasonable person in an unreasonable world. You know, I love in Brotherhood. He's like, so your ex-girlfriend's on the news. That's weird, right? He just like, and everyone's like, why do you just say things? Like Dexter's just constantly just saying things that like everyone is thinking, and I love that about him. And yeah, he sees the crimes happening and is like, these are crimes.
Yeah.
You're
He's
doing
also
crimes.
like, you know, I probably can't trust an employee. Like, probably shouldn't, you know, trust an employer who's willing to explode children. Like,
Yeah.
which is a reasonable stance to have. Like, I probably
Yeah.
can't expect to get paid by this man.
Yes.
Like, a double cross me.
And that is why I identify with Dexter Jettster now, because it's just, I feel like this should be obvious, but like that's bad. I don't know what to tell you. People are like,
Yeah.
oh, that's really insightful. And you're like, it's not. It's not at all. I haven't even done anything. That's just bad. Don't do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love him.
What a great character. You can see why Obi-Wan loves him.
What do you know?
Yeah. And so, you know, all of the kids turn on the uncle, because, you know, it really didn't take much. The uncle just shot someone in front of them, and they're like, well, what the
They're like,
hell?
oh.
Okay.
Started doing steroids and turned into Bane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But
we'll
there's a
go
big difference in power. between the light and what would be considered as the dark side. What did you guys think about this guy's end?
You know what's funny? No, Julia, you go
The fact that it's a tiny pebble, once again, Kiersten White's like, it's gonna be a tiny pebble. He's gonna defeat him with a tiny, tiny rock. Yeah. Which, you know, the origins of him throwing rocks at people, it's just beautiful to see the origins of that. But yeah, the fact that it's essentially a moment decision he has to take that he knows will probably be fatal, but he does so in like the least showy, like it's calculated in a way that seems I don't want to say kind, because it's not, but it's Anakin would just run up and stab the guy, right? Like that's just how Anakin handles problems.
And teabag him.
You're
yeah,
underestimating
exactly.
my power.
As you're doing a dissertation on gaming, I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's just Anakin doesn't take risks. If he thinks something is a threat, he takes it out. And seeing Obi-Wan consider in his mind the best way to handle this and using this sort of deflection to do it is just a very Obi-Wan thing to do. And again, like every moment in this book is done thematically in a way that is very satisfying. But I also like that it's sort of anticlimactic, because the real sort of moment choice for him is deciding to go back. But this is part of that journey, and realizing that he will have to do things that are difficult, I guess, that are challenging, and trying to approach those in his Obi-Wan way, which is how he approaches this challenge. So
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it's funny, but this scene is the one I remember least clearly. I think, like, it did not stick in my head as an especially significant moment, although of course it is, and in terms of the plot, obviously it is meant to be this sort of climactic moment. What sticks in my mind with much more clarity is, you know, Obi-Wan uncovering this recording of Orla, right, and hearing her voice for the first time, and his return to the temple, and the sort of simultaneous anxiety and certainty with which he returns to the temple. Like, consequences might be awaiting him, but he's ready to face them. That just sticks out to me as the really significant sort of conclusion to this story, and
yeah,
it's incredibly well done.
First of all,
I can't. This book does end with a line that is basically, the real Padawan was the friends we made along the way. Like, that's essentially the final line of this book.
Actually, he was a Padawan all along.
The real Padawan was inside all along. Like, I love that, because it's such a neat, it's just tied up so neatly. It's like everything wraps up so beautifully. But yeah, him going back and Qui-Gon saying no one's ever truly gone. I was like, you're not allowed to say that. You're not legally allowed to say that. So I'm like crying now thinking about it.
I just loved how we now have a whole new set of characters to ponder upon whether they are still alive, where they are. And if any of the Nautilans changed their name to Zat when they joined the Jedi Order. And if they are alive. But I think my favorite thing about the ending, of course, being the fact that everyone survived, was this kind of connection to the Kenobi show. Because when he comes back, it's basically Qui-Gon saying again, "What took you so long?" And then Obi-Wan's like, "What are you talking about? I've been trying to do this thing for you." And you're like, "Well, I've been waiting," you know? And that's basically how Qui-Gon treats his return. He's like, "Yeah, I mean, no, I didn't send you over there to learn something. I've just been waiting for you to come back, and I'm glad you're back. So let's just go in and meditate."
Qui-Gon's warmly inscrutable smile. That's just such a perfect description.
Yep.
Where like I feel safe, but also I don't know what's happening here in your mind. Like I don't understand. And yeah, that's true. Like he always has more to learn, which is just so central to my understanding of him. Is like, again, and this is, I'll make the argument again for why I think he's a good corollary to Elzar. Is like it is not. It's a constant choice. You have to keep choosing the path of serving the Force, of being a Jedi. And if you become complacent, if you sort of stop trying, that's where the problem lies. And to say that anyone's ever done or they've sort of achieved what they need to achieve is just untrue. Like you can keep learning forever. And especially when it's something of this level of importance, you know, it's something they want to do, is to continue learning. And yeah.
And then I'm also going to point out something that's the exact opposite of that, of this planet being it is the Force in and of itself, but the planet itself is a closed loop, and it being the absolute perfect visualization of the dark side. Which also I feel like Disney has been like listening to our TikToks. Because they keep canonizing things that we say nearly verbatim. Like it's been suspiciously close.
Okay, you know, if
like
only
a dam that's
if only they did
course?
that.
No,
There's one. Pablo, I know you know who I am. I'm just I gotta say, he's 16 in this book. I've seen Corky at 16. They want to help, but they're really kind of unsure of their place in things. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
No, I mean that's true as well. No, but I'm actually hinting towards the revelation that was explained to Emery in his book of, you know, the dark side is a deliberate set of choices. And the way that this book encapsulated that of, if this person, it's not like if they just stopped, what would happen? They would stop. But no, they had to keep consuming this power, or they would lose it. And they needed more and more and more. And they stopped caring about whether or not this ecosystem was in balance, whether it would hurt the people that were already here, and just the way that spiraled, and you can feel that person that's an addict, you know, which I talk, you know, my own personal sister has, you know, addiction issues, and to me she's Anakin, and the way that this like rung true in my heart was just like such a beautiful cap to the end of the story. And then of course, you know, Obi-Wan makes it home. I've also been on the side of doing something that's wildly out of character, definitely wrong, and you're like, can I go back, or do I need to Thelma and Louise this shit, and like we're gonna ride this over a mountainside or something. I don't know, but
yeah,
he comes back and he gets the Cantum Psi treatment, and it's wonderful.
It's beautiful. But we are severely over time for this episode. I would like to give you guys, well, first of all, thank you guys for being on and giving us your beautiful insight as always. You guys are always a treat to have. Your words are S tier when it comes to talking to books. And I would like to give everyone here at least 2 more minutes to give their final thoughts on the book, but also sell it. Okay, spoiler banner's gone to whoever you think should read this book, and then we'll wrap it up afterwards. And we'll start with Julia.
If you, for example, like the High Republic, this is a High Republic Obi-Wan book. And what I mean by that is not content-wise, it's like ethos and style-wise. It feels very similar in style to how the young adult High Republic books are written, and that they feel like they are written about and for actual young adults. The actual adolescent process is relatable, even if you are an adult, and it sort of takes you into this moment in Obi-Wan's life in which everything seems so uncertain, even though we know already what kind of Jedi he's to become. It's incredibly satisfying to see him start the journey of getting to that point in his life, and to see him struggle with who he is and what he wants, and whether or not he, serving the Force is his destiny or if it's a choice. This book also has my favorite oblique reference to a character that I love very much, that if you're a fan of a relationship in his life, you will hopefully enjoy as much as I do. This is getting to spend this much time in Obi-Wan Kenobi's head is a treat, and Kiersten White understands this character in a way that is incredibly deep and very satisfying, and you will probably read this book in one sitting.
Yes.
Absolutely. Fern?
Yeah, so I read this book while I was on a family vacation, and despite the fact that we were busy and we had things to do, I was up till 3 a.m. reading because I couldn't put it down. This is an intensely readable book. It is a joy to read. I talk pretty often about something I read in a creative writing book once about how you must be careful as a writer not to interrupt from the vivid and continuous stream, which is the experience we have of sort of imagining the events or living in the world of the events of a book as we read it. And anything that distracts from that or interrupts or makes you think, oh, that was a weird word choice, or oh, I don't think it makes sense for this character to do this, interrupts from that vivid and continuous stream, and you should try and avoid that. Very few things interrupted from my vivid and continuous stream while reading this book. It is beautifully composed. Kiersten White is a wonderfully adept writer on the level of the line. She writes beautiful sentences, and the book itself is neat and tidy, and as Julia said, understands Obi-Wan on such a deep and complex level. And if you've been enjoying this sort of year of Obi-Wan we've been having, but you want to explore his interiority and who he is as a person, beyond what we see in the movies and the TV shows, and you want to just dig a little deeper into his psyche, that's something you'll absolutely be able to do in this book. I really can't recommend it enough. It is one of my new favorite Star Wars books. I think it's just such a treat and such a joy, and it feels like a gift to me, and I think to everyone who has a similar understanding of this character as me. So I recommend it.
Awesome. And Choco. You don't have to if you don't want to.
No. I wasn't expecting it, but this book is us. It's all of us. It's everyone in the Star Wars fandom, and I can't tell you, as old and crotchety of a man that I am nowadays, how refreshing was to read a book that really encapsulates how I have forgotten that I felt when I was younger, in every way. All of these, it's so well written and so understanding of what younger people go through with just the sheer amounts of uncertainty and deciding on what your path is going to be, and wishing that I didn't have to choose what my own path is, because that part of this is scary. Can't someone else decide for me? Or if I do this, will someone else be? No, only you can choose your path, and it's odd and it's strange and it's confusing, and finding out who you are and figuring out what you want. No one can tell you that. No one can ever tell you what you want, what you deserve, and how to get there. People can give you hints, but your experience will be different from theirs, and that's the journey that Obi-Wan goes through in this book. And so if you are a human, this is a good book for you, because either you are really young and you will go through this, or you're a teenager and you're going through this, or you're an adult and you've gone through this. It's great.
Awesome. So that'll do it for this episode of DYAD and the Force. I would like to thank Fern and Julia for coming on and sharing their thoughts with us for the Padawan book. As always, you can follow them. You can follow Fern at Always Fern on TikTok and Julia on TikTok at JuliaChristine77, or just follow Star Wars English Class. Julia, you have your homework assignment, which is a Canva project, to provide me with a 1080p graphic to place on top of our stage here, so that everyone can see where they can find you and all of your information and schedule and stuff. Thank you guys in the chat for tuning in and sticking around if you had lurked through that spoiler chat. And I hope that a lot of you decide to go read Padawan if you have not already. Let's give a shout out to all of our wonderful friends of the channel. First and foremost, the Far Far Away Factory. Brooke Dazzler, who does some amazing, jewelry, t-shirts, jackets, and apparel for Star Wars stuff, who is currently working on the one and only Satele Shan t-shirt for me. And it will be the only merch because I can't find a dang thing with Satele Shan.
You gotta make your own. If you can't find it, you gotta make your own.
And I gotta, and thank you to Brooke for doing this, and I'll be sporting it in the future episodes. Fulcrum Transmissions episodes every Monday.
Such a work of art. Oh my god.
Fulcrum Pod on Twitter and TikTok, Instagram Fulcrum Podcast. We also have House of Holocrons every Friday at 5 p.m. Central. You can find them on Spotify and Anchor, House of Holocrons, and on YouTube, Ducks and Download. Kessel Run Relay, available on Spotify and Apple Music, as well as where all other pods are cast. Kessel Run Relay.
And if you want to hear us talk about Padawan
again for a second time, we will be on.
We're gonna be
presumably this week. We're recording tomorrow, so we will be on Kessel Run Relay in the near future.
Yes. So check out Kessel Run Relay. New episodes at the beginning of the week. I'm sure, or they just mentioned Fern and Julia are going to be recording tomorrow, and I guess that's going to be up on that following Monday. Camilla over at Beings of the Galaxy, a Star Wars narrative podcast telling the stories of everyday people in our galaxy far, far away. You can find them on Twitter.
Recognize some cool voices in there. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Yeah. Some of those voices incoming in the next couple of months. Returning voices, to say the least. Voices that could sound very transatlantic if we wanted to.
Oh, some of them have kind of a southern type of thing in the speech pattern. So that's not even the accent either. Damn it! Listen, I need my director in order to get into the mindset. So
yeah, of course. And of course, a good friend of the channel, Cal4 on Twitch, twitch.tv/Cal4. I believe they're streaming at this very moment. If you guys have any free time after we head out from this podcast, go check out Cal4 and see what game they're playing and if they're willing to play with you. If you're looking for friends to play online games together. Shout out to Dex and Download, Connor, Young, Kiki, Love Chat, XYZ, Craig Pryor.
Polk Nation for sure. It's been a while since we've been able to hang out, but nice to see you in here.
Darthman86 and
Scott Summers 2020.
Scott Summers.
And to answer your old question, Scott Summers, it is better than Crystal Star. Please don't ever mention Crystal Star.
Young says so many good pods from amazing content creators, which is why they're up there. And if you have any creations or if you have any podcasts for your own and you want to submit them, please hit us up on our public Discord server and send me the graphics. I'll put them on there. Yeah, and also thank you to our DYAD Squadron members, without which we cannot continue to create content, of which Julia and Fern are members as well.
Love you guys.
We love you guys, yeah. Thank you guys so much for your support. Your love is highly appreciated and is thusly reciprocated But I believe that is the end. On to the next one.
For light and for life.
We are all the Republic.
And may the force be with you. Always.
Do or do not. There is